Episode number 902, 39-year BNI member.
You're listening to the official BNI podcast with BNI founder and Chief Visionary Officer, Dr. Ivan Misner. Stay tuned for networking and referral marketing tips from the man who's been called the father of modern networking, along with suggestions and insights into getting the most from your membership in the world's largest networking organization, BNI.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the official BNI podcast. I'm Priscilla Rice, and I'm coming to you from Live Oak Recording Studio in Berkeley, California, and I'm joined on the phone today by the founder and the Chief Visionary Officer of BNI, Dr. Ivan Misner. Hello, Ivan. How are you, and where are you?
I am doing great, and I am at home in Austin, Texas this week, and I'm really excited to have a guest on the podcast. He is the world's longest standing member of BNI. His name is Stephen Marche, and Stephen has been a BNI member for 39 years. Now, we have a couple of members whose companies have been in for 40 years, but it was their parent, and then they handed over to one of their children. But Stephen himself has been a BNI member for 39 years. He joined BNI when it was called The Network many, many eons ago, in June of 1986, where he learned a lot of lessons, he has said, about networking and helping clients secure real estate loans, which is the industry he's in. Stephen is very detail-oriented, and he loves to get loans closed. His passion, he says, lies in assisting people, especially the self-employed business owners. And he likes to say the only good loan is a closed loan. Stephen, it's been a long time since we've talked, and it's really great to hear your voice. Welcome to the BNI podcast.
Thank you, Ivan. I appreciate that.
You got a great voice for radio. You should do a radio show, Steve.
I did, and it was phenomenal when the rates were in the 2s and 3s. But
well, listen, it's great to have you on the podcast, and I got to start by asking you, 39 years. I'm just so impressed with that. That is so incredible. How have you managed to be a member for so long? I know you've transitioned from one chapter to another, but talk about the long-term relationships and being in that long.
Well, you started me off. You stood there in that conference room, the Best Western, 1986. And I was impressed. And I said, hey, you taught me and told me what you learned and why you opened a few chapters at that point. And I learned it all. One thing that I did learn, and it's been the best way to get people in to the chapter and build it. But here's one that maybe you'll share with everybody. Referrals. When someone would call me, and especially realtors, they would always talk about, well, I have to give 2 people referrals or 3 referrals. And I said, that's not the way I do it. The way I refer somebody, if I trust them, is I will make sure my good friend calls you, Ivan. And it's up to them to call you and make that connection. And I taught that throughout the chapters and been back to call. They've asked me to come in and speak many times in the different chapters, which I have. And another thing is about membership. I have always brought in members, and here's how I taught them. I tell the story about Copenhagen. We had a exchange student, and she came a few times back to California from Sweden, and she says, my dad would like to talk to you. I said, have him call me. He says, you leave here every Wednesday morning very, very early before I get up, and your family wondered where you went. I says, to BNI Network. Oh, okay. My dad would like to know. So I called him up, and he told me his name was Michael. And he said, well, what do you do and how do you do it? And I explained. I says, but you need to go to one. He says, well, I checked it before I called you, and it's 3 hours away. And I said, just a minute. I said, there's one 10 minutes, but here's what you do. You go, don't leave until you get an application and join. Do you know that he called me the next day and told me that he wouldn't leave, and they couldn't believe it, and he joined. 6 months later, a year later, he became vice president. Still there. Another story, real quick.
Well, let me just comment on that, Steve. The idea of going to a meeting is so important. And, when I was starting BNI in 85, 86, I did the kickoff that you were at, and very few people can say that I was there and did the kickoff when they started. But one of the things that I would tell people is you got to come to a meeting. They'd ask. Back in '86, we had no material, so they'd ask for brochures or whatnot. I didn't have anything. There was no internet, and I said, you got to come. You got to come to a meeting and experience it. Bring plenty of business cards, and so that is the key: is going to a BNI meeting to see it firsthand.
Well, another one very quickly is Georgia. A gentleman lived in Chicago, Minnesota, and he moved his CPA practice for whatever reason to Georgia, a distant cousin. And he asked me, what do I do? And he knows that every Wednesday I had a meeting. And I said, find a chapter in Atlanta, Georgia, and just go. He said, what do you mean? Call him up and tell him you'd like to be a guest. Yeah. And I said, do not leave until you get an application and join the chapter. Well, within 6 months, he became treasurer, and I believe he's still treasurer after all these years. Best CPA in that area. And he loves it. Simple as that. And
did you say he's a CPA?
CPA, yes.
Yeah. So the one organization the one company that is still a member after 40 years is a CPA organization, Denny and Company. And they were my CPA back in 1985, and the company is they're still members today. And it's Carolyn's son, Matt Denny, who is the member. So CPAs have been very, very successful in BNI, as have home loan people such as yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Attorneys we were at Baker Square on Teal Boulevard. You were there, and yeah. Sure enough, we had 4 different attorneys. I never saw so many pink slips being transferred between them and us. The 4 attorneys would refer back and forth. And for 2 or 3 years, there were 4 different type of attorneys in our group.
Yeah. So for those of you who are wondering what a pink slip is, because we do most everything on BNI Connect now, those are the referral slips that we used to have, and some chapters still use them. And actually hand out the slip, which I think has some power to it, handing it out like that. So that's what Steve is referring to. I'm going to do a podcast coming up soon, Steve, where there's a chapter that has over 10 attorneys in the group, which blows my mind. But it shows how you can actually be supportive of different classifications versus competitive with them.
That's true. We have one in our group. He's given me a credit for a $3 million loan, and we were able to get him an approval in a matter of 3 days. But yeah. He does the conventional. Sure.
Yeah. Excellent. So any recommendations for people, for all the people out there that have not been a member for 39 years? What's your words of wisdom for people to understand that networking is more, and the BNI is more of a marathon than a sprint?
Well, you've got to be there. And people say to me, how many times have you missed? I said 5, 2 kids, 1 sickness, and 2 vacations. And they don't understand that. You've got to show up.
You do, but have you had subs representing you beyond those 5 or no?
Yes, I have. During the years when we were at the Wilshire Obelisk Golf Course, I had Mark Bacharach, entertainer, and a magician come and entertain versus me speaking, because I was up.
And having a legitimate sub is totally acceptable, and that's fantastic. So you've missed 5 meetings without a sub in 39 years. So you hold 2 records in the organization, Steve. I think that's incredible.
Well, I did have recently, I think in the last year or so, I did have a sub, this guy Pete sub for me, and they said he did a great job. Of course, I fed the information.
Well, that's the key on a sub. And I've got some podcasts where I talked about regretting creating the substitute program, which was approved by the Board of Advisors. But we also found that the substitute program, when done right, is effective. And so you just said you prepared your sub, and that's when it's done right. It's when you just hand over and say, hey, fill in for me, and you don't give them any information that it's done wrong. Or when you have these professional subs, all they do is sub in a chapter. That's when it's done wrong. But it sounds like you did it right.
On as a verbal statement, and it seems to work very well.
Yeah. Well, Steve, any closing thoughts before we wrap up here today?
Well, my wife never really understood what networking was all about. I explained that you had said it was never taught in school, college.
Yeah.
You were told never to talk to strangers, not to share things.
Yeah.
And I get up and share things every day. I learn something every day. I teach my kids. It's always learning something every single day to make us better. And my wife always asks me, Steve, why are you so dedicated? You get up and you solve problems for self-employed people that are turned down. You know, people don't understand, why would I be turned down? Banks that they've been with for 25, 30 years, they come to me and I figure it out. I solve problems. I have a sign that my daughter gave me for the holiday and my birthday. Dad fixes things. I'm the fixer when it comes to loans.
I love
Private loans, estate loans, blanket loans, swing loans, bridge loans, commercial loans, residential. Hey, look, if you've got a simple guy that has a restaurant, he's been turned down by 3 of his major banks, runs millions of dollars through. They turned him down. He came to me. He wants to open up another restaurant 2 miles down the street. We got him a loan in a matter of a week.
When what you're talking about here, Steve, that I think it can apply to everyone is that BNI members really tend to, from what I've seen, knock themselves out to take great care of the referrals that they get. And clearly you do that, or you wouldn't have been in for 39 years now. Listen, we're out of time. For anyone that's interested, you can see Steve's website at homeloans411.com. That's homeloans, the number 411.com. Steve, thank you so much for being a loyal member of this organization for 39 years. I'm really proud to have you as part of BNI.
Well, it's been 39 years since we first talked, and we've talked many times thereafter.
We have, and I hope to talk again more.
You.
Thanks a lot, my friend. Priscilla, over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was some wonderful information. This podcast is sponsored by MisnerAudioPrograms.com, and these audio programs will provide you with the tools and the inspiration to powerfully enhance your BNI experience. So check out the great material that's available to you at MisnerAudioPrograms.com, and then you can use the promo code IVAN50 for 50% off of everything. All of the proceeds go to the BNI Foundation. Thank you so much for listening. This is Priscilla Rice, and we look forward to having you join us again next week for another exciting episode of the official BNI podcast.